So this is week 1 for term 4, mixed practice activities. And this week's activities focus on financial documents in particular. So the first question we have is about Roadside Tour and Travel Agency, who are making a booking at a guest house for 36 colleagues to attend a conference in Uppington. They tell us the guest house offers rooms with 2 beds and 4 beds for accommodation. And Annexure A shows us that roadside tours and travel agencies receive from the guest house. The total amount of accommodation meals, they tell us, were paid for in advance. And then we've got the annexure provided. So the first question was the address of the guest house. So if we just look at the guest house over here, we're going to be looking at the address relating to the guest house. So that's at the top. And it's there at Bossy Street in Uppington. Alright, this address further down, when we're looking over here, is the address of the company of this Roadside Tours and Travel. So just be careful not to confuse which address we're looking at. The second question asks us to calculate the missing value C, which is the total of the costs for the 4-bedroom rooms. And they tell us there it's going to be for 2 people, for 2 nights, and it's 850 Rand per person. But what we don't have is a quantity. So to find this one, we're going to have to look at our total instead, the value that we need at the total, and subtract the known values. So all that we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, that's 75,000 Rand and 40. Take away the other values that we do have, the 6480, the 5760, and the 28800. And when you remove all of those, you're going to get to a total of 34,000 Rand, which is our value for C. All right. Question number 1.1.4 asks us to determine in simplified form the ratio of the number of guests booked in the 2-bedroom to the number of guests booked in the 4-bedroom. So the first thing we actually need to do is work out, well, how many guests were booked in each of those rooms. So let's just put the right value over here so we have it. And we're going to just work backwards to see that information. So the question here is, if we have a 4-bedroom room and it's 850 per person per night, we can say 34,000 divided by that 850, and then we're also going to need to divide by 2 because it tells us that it was for 2 nights. So to find out how many people, we need to also find the cost for 1 night. And if you do that, we get to 20 people. We do the same thing for the 2 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms are 28,800. So I can divide by 2 to find the cost for 1 night. And then divide by 900 to find the cost for 1 person, or to find how many people were charged 900 Rand. And when you do that, we get to 16. So now we know, okay, how many people were in the 4-bedroom, how many people were in the 2-bedroom. The question told us in simplified form the ratio 2-bedroom to 4-bedroom. So 2-bedroom was 16, 4-bedroom was 20, and it must be in the order of the question. I can simplify that by dividing both sides by 4, and that will give me 4 is to 5 as my final answer. Question 1.1.5 then asks us about the cancellation. Right, and the question says there that 2 of the colleagues who booked the 2-bedroom rooms cancelled as follows. First we have one who cancelled at 11 a.m. and the other at 3 o'clock on the check-in date. The meal for their cost will be fully refunded, so we know there's something to do with meals. And accommodation will be refunded according to the conditions in the cancellation policy as stated. The tour operator says it will be less than 2,500 Rand. Verify whether it's correct. Showing all calculations. And we know as soon as we see this word verify, we must have that conclusion statement in the end to tell us whether they are right or not. So let's go and look at our annex show over here and see what the cancellation policies tell us. So we've got here, according to the cancellation policy, 25% if it's cancelled before the check-in time on the check-in date, and 75% if it's cancelled after the check-in time at the check-in date. So let's go and see firstly how much did these people spend and how much are they going to have to still pay for their accommodation. So the first person, we're going to do this separately, so person number 1 over here, they cancelled at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock would have been before the check-in time. So they have to pay 25% of the accommodation. We know that the accommodation was 850 Rand. Sorry, no, 900 Rand, because they were staying in the 2-bedroom place. So 900 Rand per night, and it was for 2 nights. So therefore we need to know what is the 25%, or you can actually write it as 25 over 100 times by the 900 Rand times 2 nights. Okay. And then when we calculate that, we're going to get to 450 Rand. So that was person number 1. Person number 2, let's just go into a different color here. Person number 2, well, they cancelled at after the check-in time. So that means they are going to be charged 75%. So we have 75%, or 75 over 100. Also a 2-bedroom room, so the cost is going to be the same. 900 times by 2. And therefore they are going to need to pay 1,350. Okay. Sorry, I keep saying they're going to have to pay. This is the refund. Right, so this first person, let's look at the refund now because we know how much they're going to have to pay. So this first person's going to have to pay 450. So their refund is going to be 18 minus the 450, which is 1,350. Okay. The second person who cancelled later in the day, their refund is going to be 18 minus the 1,350, which is 450. Okay. It can be a little confusing because the values actually counter each other, but that's the idea. Now, there is one other thing that was mentioned in the question that they are going to be refunded for, and that was the cost of their meals. And they tell us that their meal refunds are going to be done in full. So if we look at their meals, and we'll just go into a different color again, we are told here in the meals that their lunch meals and dinner meals, lunch meals are 80 Rand and dinner meals are 90 Rand. So each of them are going to be, their booking was for 2 days, so we can say 2 times the lunch meals, 2 times 80, and then we also need to say 2 times 90, so that's for 1 person, and there are 2 of them, so we're going to go and multiply that by the 2 people as well. So this is now the meals, and that will give us 680. Therefore, we now have each of their refunds and their meals, and if you combine those 3 all together, just through adding, and I'll do it on the side here, I'm a little out of space. We will say, okay, we need to say 1350 plus 450 plus the 680, and their total refund is going to be 2480. Now there's one more thing, because this type of a question, we know they use the word verify, so we need to say, was the tour operator correct in saying it was less than 2,500 Rand? Yes, it was, because this is clearly under, so we need to also put our little conclusion to say they were correct. Okay. And that was our 7-mark question there. Alright, let's look at question 2.2. So 2.2, we've got here a step tariff, or a sliding scale tariff of properties in Cape Town. This is a very typical question, and they ask us just to calculate how much more a household will have to pay on level 6 when compared to level 4, and importantly they tell us 37 kiloliters. Alright, so when we get these questions, the first thing we need to do is see which step are we actually going up to. And if I look at this, 37 is between 35 and 50, so I know that this is going to sort of be my stopping point. So the first thing we want to do is see, okay, how many kiloliters are in each step. So step number 1 is 0 to 6, so I'm going to go 6 minus 0 is 6 kiloliters. Step number 2 is 6 to 10, so I'm going to go 6 or 10 minus 6 is 4 kiloliters. Step number 3, well, step 2 ended on 10 and I'm going up to 20, so I'm going to go 20 minus 10, which is 10 kiloliters. Step number 4 is ended from 20 up to 35, so 35 minus 20 gives me 15 kiloliters. And then step number 5, remember, we don't want to go all the way up to 50 kiloliters, we only want to go up to 37. So I'm going to go 37 minus the 35 I ended step 4 on, gives me 2 kiloliters. Okay, so that now tells me what I can calculate with. Is I can go and see, okay, I need to have 37, so we just check 6 plus 4 plus 10 is 20, 35, 37 kiloliters. So I've used the right number of kiloliters for my calculations. Now they want us to compare level 4 to level 6. So that means we are going to have to calculate each of those levels separately. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with level 4. And for level 4, I'm going to start, step number 1 was 4,65. So I'm going to go 4,65 times by 6 kiloliters. Step number 2 was 17,75, and I'm going to say that's times by the 4. Step number 3 is 25,97, and I'm going to times that by 10. Step number 4, and I'm just reading this off the table here. I'm looking here at step number 4, 43.69, so I'm going to go 43,69 times by 15, and the last one, 113,99, and I'm timesing it by 2. Okay, then we're going to do each of those in a calculator and get an answer, and I'll do that very quickly off screen. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to add all of these values together. Remember, the big thing with step tariffs is to remember we're not just doing one step. We're not just going to go to step number 5 and times this by the total number and times that 113 by 37. We actually need to go and break it into separate steps. So I got all my steps, I add them all together on a calculator, and I get 1241,93. Okay, that was level 4. Next, I need to do exactly the same thing, but instead of on level 4, I'm going to need to do it on level 6. So I'm going to do exactly the same concept, except with the different values. So I'll just show you the first one and then I'll do the rest off screen. So on level 6, I'm going to see level 1 is 29 Rand 93, and I'm timesing that by my 6 kiloliters. And I kind of keep going with that. 52.44 times by 4, 114 times by 10, and so on, going through 134 times by 15, and 912 times by 2. Okay, and then again I'm going to multiply those across, get my totals, and then add them all together. There we go. Okay, so I've multiplied those across and then added them all together. Now the question says how much more will they pay on level 6 compared to level 4. So that means we need to know how much more is this 5,300 than the 1,200. And to work that out, we just subtract them. So we're going to say 5363,34, level 6, minus level 4. And that will give me my final answer of 4121,14. Alright, our next question here is 2.1, and it's all about the tourists traveling by train, and some tourists taking a trip on the Shosholoza Merrill from Joburg to East London. They tell us the tourist was accompanied by her father, who was born in 1959, her husband, and her 2 children. We know when they departed and when they arrived, and annexure tells us about the train schedules and the fares from below. So the first thing they want us to do is to calculate the total stopover times at all the railway stations between Johannesburg and East London. So let's go look what we've got for this. So for each of the stops, these are all the different railway stations going down in our column here. We've got Johannesburg to Germiston, Vereeniging, Sasolburg, and so on. We've got our arrival times going down here, and we have our departure times going. So we need to work out the stops. And the stops are going to be from our departure, sorry, not what I should say from our departure, from our arrival to our departure time. And how long is that time that's passed by? So the first one here, we see it's 17:58 is our departure time, and 17:53 is our arrival time. Now, if you just counted, you can actually see that that would be a total of 5 minutes. But if you're not too sure how to calculate that by looking at it, you can do a subtraction column. So I'll show you how to do it with, for example, the next one, 1920 to 1900. And all you would do is you'd say the later time first on the top minus the earlier time underneath it. And when you subtract, you're going to get 20 minutes in this case. Okay. So for each of these times are not great differences, so you shouldn't really need to do full calculations for them. So we've got 20 minutes. I'm going from 43 to 48, that's 5 minutes. And I'm just kind of going down the same thing, seeing what is the difference between the later and the earlier time. I got 28 and 26, so that's 2. I got 46 and 44. And I'm just looking at the minutes because the stopovers are only a few minutes. They're not particularly long. You can see the hours are not actually changing. So that's 2. 16 and 14 is 2. 55 and 32, this was a longer stopover. So I'm going to say 55 minutes minus the 32 minutes gives me 23. This one here in Springfontein is actually quite a lot longer. It's 4:15 and 3:49. So let's look at doing a column sum for that one, just to assist if you're not sure how to do that. I'll make some space at the bottom. So I've got 4 15, and I'm taking away 3, 49. Now here's my problem. I can't say 15 minus 49 because I'm going to get a negative number, and that's going to be a bit confusing. So what I need to do is I need to say, well, look, I have to borrow from my hours, and I need to move an hour across into minutes. So I'm going to say, well, rather let's make this 3 hours and carry 1 hour into minutes. So an hour in minutes is 60 minutes. So I'm going to say, well, 60 minutes plus the 15 minutes that I already have there is actually going to be 75 minutes. It's a little bit small there. Let me see if I can move it down. There you go. Okay, so now I've got 3 hours and 75 minutes, which is the same thing as 4 hours and 15 minutes, just written with 1 hour in minutes. And now it's a little easier because I can actually say, well, what is 75 minus 49? And 75 minus 49 is 26. 3 minus 3 is actually nothing. So I have 26 minutes in that stopover. Okay. So I'm going 26 over here. And we kind of keep going. 5 o'clock to 3 minutes past 5 is 3 minutes. 6:17 to 6:34 is going to be 17 minutes. 25 to 28 is 3 minutes. 58 to 12. Again, you might need to do a subtraction for this, but it's going to be 14. 43 to 46 is 3. 39 to 42 is 3. And then we've arrived in East London, so there's no more stops at that point. So all you need to do now, because they want the total stopover time, is to add these values all together. And if you do add them all together, you get to 138 minutes. Now, nothing in the question says that you need to change the time into hours or into a different format. So you're perfectly fine leaving it as 138 minutes over there. This was a lot of marks for what was a relatively straightforward question. They actually gave 3 marks on calculating the stopover times, where you would be penalized 1 mark for every 2 errors. And then the last 2 marks were for adding and then for your final answer. Okay. The next question was asking you for the mode, or the modal stopover time. And mode we know means most. So this one, what you needed to do is look and see which of these numbers occur the most in this list. And if you actually count them, you can go and see, okay, 5 occurs once, twice. Let me do it so you can see what I'm looking at here. 5 will occur, Okay, so let's see. 5 will occur once there, twice there. That's only 2. 20 only occurs once. 2 occurs once, 2, 3, 4. 2 occurs 4 times. 8 only occurs once. 23 once. 26 once. 3 occurs 1, 2, 3, 4 times as well. So it occurred the same number of times as 2. And then 17 and 14 only occur once. So 2 and 3 both occur 4 times in our list. So that means that they are our modal score. And you would need to state both of them. You can't just state one of them when they occur the same number of times. So 2 and 3 are the modal score for question 2.1.2. Right, the next question, 2.1.3, says they determine the average speed at which the train travelled from Johannesburg to East London. It's 7 marks, which can look a bit scary, and it tells us there you can use the formula distance is speed times time, where D is distance, S is speed, and T is time in hours. And it does tell us, which was nice of them to put it there, excluding the stopovers at the railway systems, the railway stations. So let's look at our formula. Firstly, we're going to need to rearrange it because they're not actually asking us for distance. They are asking us for speed. So we're just going to rewrite it as going speed is equal to distance over time. Now we need to figure out our distance and our time. Distance is quite easy because it's actually at the top of your annexure. If I put it over there, it's right here at the top. It tells us our distance is 922 kilometers. So that one we don't even really need to worry about. It's 922 kilometers. The time is where it's going to, sorry, not 922, 992. The time is where we're going to get a bit more complicated, because how long is this trip actually? So we need to see. We know when we look at our table, they departed at 17:30 on day 1. And we know that they arrived at 13:24 on day 2. So how do we work out how much time has passed? Okay, well, let's see. You can count it. You can literally go and count how many hours and go, okay, 17:30, 18:30, 19:30, and count your way up. Or we can do a bit of a subtraction. So let me just first start by writing our times here. So we know we arrive at 13:24. And we know we departed at 17:30. So the question is how much time has passed. Okay, and these are on 2 different days. So when you have time going over different days, it's often useful to do each day separately. So let's start with day 1. So day 1 was going from 17:30 or 5:30 to midnight. Now midnight, I want you to think of as being 24 hours. It's the completion of 24 hours in that day. So I'm going to subtract. I'm going to go 24 minus 17:30. We're going to do that same borrowing concept that we did from before, where I'm going to say, okay, I need to borrow an hour because I can't go 0 minus 30. So 23 hours and 60 minutes. And then I can say, right, well, 60 minus 30 is 30. Oops. And 23 minus 17 is going to give me 6. So I have 6 hours and 30 minutes on day 1. Day 2 is a little bit easier because day 2, we start at 0 and we end at 13:24 or 24 minutes past 1. So day 2, we're going from midnight, and midnight is actually 0. Right? That's the start of our new day. So the start of the day starts at 0 to 13:24. Well, that's quite easy. It's 13 hours and 24 minutes. So now we can say, what is our total time? Well, we got 13 hours, 24 minutes on day 2, plus the 6 hours and 30 minutes on day 1 gives us 54 minutes and 19 hours and 54 minutes. So that's actually the whole time of the trip, the whole duration. But the question says that for time we want to exclude the stopover times, right? Because the train wasn't moving then. It's not going to contribute to the speed. So I'm going to take that 19 hours and I'm going to need to subtract that 138 minutes that we calculated in the last question. But 138 minutes is a bit difficult to take away from 19 hours and 54 minutes. So I'm going to actually rewrite this as saying I'm going to subtract 2 hours and 18 minutes. Okay. And that I'm doing by saying, okay, 60 minutes an hour, 2 of them is 120, and I'm left with 18 minutes. So when I do this and I say 19 hours and 54 minus 2 hours and 18, I'm going to get to 17 hours. And that's just a column calculation, by the way. If you're not seeing what I'm doing, I'll do it here. 1954 minus 218 leaves me with 36 minutes, 17 hours. So this is actually my travel time, this over here. And this is actually the time I'm going to need to use in my formula. But I'm still sitting with a little bit of a problem, because we should know at this point, I can write here 17 hours and 36 minutes, But how do you put that onto a calculator? You actually can't. And I know there are people who try to put it as a decimal and we just say 17,36. That's not the right idea either. We need to actually say, well, it's 17 hours and 36 minutes out of 60. So 17 hours and 36 out of 60, and I put 36 over 16 in my calculator, is actually 17,6. So that is the amount that's actually going to go into my formula. So I'm going to take out this over here. Maybe I must use a different color. No. And I'm going to say over 17,6. Now I've got my distance in kilometers, my time in hours, which is what I need. And if you just do that subtraction calculation, I'm just going to remove this so we don't think that this actually relates to the answer here. You're going to get to 56,36 kilometers per hour. And that was the 7-mark question. So just to recap what we did, we rearranged the formula. Okay. That was us rearranging it. We did this first over here. Then we worked out how much time passed. And the amount of time passed we looked, or the length of the trip, we looked at the arrival and departure time from the table. We worked out for day 1 how much time had passed. It was 6 hours and 30 minutes. We worked out for day 2 how much time had passed, and it was 13 hours and 24 minutes. Total 1954. We needed to take away the stops because they told us no stops. That gave us over here the 1736. And then we put that into our formula in the right format and got to our final answer of average speed. Alright, our last question is calculate the total cost of the return trip for our family. And we do have some information about the size of the family from our question. So now we need to see who's involved in the family. We're told there was the tourist. They had her father, who was born in 1959, her husband, and her 2 children, aged 3 and 6. And now we need to go and see what they tell us about the fares. So at the bottom of the table over here, we had the fares. I'm just going to put this on a new page. Alright, so we need to now calculate the fees. We have a bit of information, and it's a little bit of a trick question here because they say return trip, but the start of the trip is in January, and here's our January price, and then the end of the trip, or the return part, is in February, and we have a different February price. And that actually means we're going to have to calculate them as if they were 2 separate trips as opposed to 1 return trip, unless there is anything in the terms and conditions about return trips being booked. And in this case, there actually isn't anything there, so we don't have to. So we're going to have to do them separately. Okay, so let's start by going with the trip going there. So let's start with firstly the tourist and her husband, because they are the most straightforward, I think. Tourist and her husband are 2 people. Let me actually say what I'm doing here. This is January. 2 people at the fee of $560. It gives me their fee of $1120. Then we have the 2 children. Now the 2 children, according to what we're told here, is they will get 50% of the fare during off-peak season, and they'll have to pay 80% during peak season. And they tell us peak season is November to January. So that means they're going to have to pay 80% of the ticket. So we need to work that out. So we're going to say, right, 2 children, and they are paying 80%, so 80 over 100 of the 560, and that will give us a cost of $898. Then we have the father. The father was born in 1959, so that means he is over 55 years old. If you weren't sure and you wanted to check that, you could go 1959 plus the 55 years. That'll give me 2014, which we know we're past 2014. So he gets his discount of 25% off. So we're going to say, right, so he would be 560 minusing his discount of 25% of 560. That's the discount. And therefore his price is going to be 420. Now I can total those amounts up from the rand symbol there. And when I add those three values together, I get the price for January to be 2436. There we go. Now the trick people, or the mistake people make here is we say, okay, return trip times by 2. But we can't because February is more expensive. So now we're going to need to do February instead. So let me move this out of the way for now so that we can do February. Okay. So for February, we're going to start, For February, we're going to start by going and seeing the 2 tourists and her husband, so 2 times 490. Then which is going to give me 980. We now need to do the children, and the children, we are told in this case that because February is off-peak, right, because peak was January, so February being off-peak, they're going to pay 50% of the price. So 2 children, right, 50%, or you could say half, 50 over 100 of 490. And that will give me the cost of 490 in total. Then we're going to go to the father, and the father gets his 25% discount. So this is the same as what we did in the last question. It would have been 490 minus 25% of 490. And that's going to give me 367.50. I can add all of those three together, so I'm just adding them together. And that gives me, for February, the return part of the trip, it's going to cost them 3750. So now I've got my February amount and my January amount, and I'm just going to add them together. So I will say here, right, the January of 2436 plus the February of 183750 gives me my total cost of 273, not 23, 273.50. Okay. And that was quite a long question, but it was also with quite a lot of marks there. 11 marks is quite a large question, so you should know you're needing probably about a page worth of calculations for that question. Alright, and that brings us to the end of the week 1 activities.